It was 3:17 a.m., the kind of hour where the world pretends to sleep, but your mind betrays you with a relentless siege, and I lay there on sweat-soaked sheets in a penthouse that echoed like a tomb, chest heaving as if I'd run a marathon through hell itself, panic attacks ripping through me like shrapnel from a grenade I never saw coming, each breath a ragged plea against the invisible noose tightening around my throat. By all measures, I was winning. Six-figure deals closing like clockwork, a feed full of curated triumphs that masked the rut beneath, endless emails pinging like distant artillery fire, pulling me from fractured sleep into another dawn of scripted charisma. But inside, it was a hollow roar, an unfulfilled drive gnawing at my bones like a wolf starved of true meat, leaving me a shell of the man I'd sworn to become, the provider, the conqueror, the unbreakable force who chased every fleeting win, only to crash each night into the same abyss, body trembling, soul whispering accusations of fraud in the dark. This wasn't just exhaustion. It was modern masculinity's quiet war on the self, a betrayal forged in the fires of dopamine traps and societal scripts that demand you outrun your shadow, equating worth to output, identity to inbox zeros, turning warriors into wage slaves who scroll for salvation in the glow of screens that promise everything and deliver dust. They told you to hustle harder, to grind through the fog with another coffee and a motivational quote pinned to your vision board. But deep down, you know it's a lie. The chase devours a chaser, leaving you reactive, inconsistent, addicted to the next hit of validation that never quite fills a void, your ancient fire dimmed to embers under the weight of notifications and never-ending to-dos. I felt it all that night, the unspoken ache you carried too. Brother, the gnawing sense that strength isn't in the endless sprint, but in something sharper, something deliberate, a single cut through the chaos that severs the chains without apology. And in that suffocating fracture, as my heart hammered like a war drum out of rhythm, a flicker pierced the black, the tease of a 90-day ritual, drawn from the unyielding code of Bushido, where samurai didn't chase shadows but forged themselves in the void, one breath, one vow at a time, old mindset crumbling under its own frenzy, new emerging like steel from the anvil, not more, but mastery. I was you then, hollowed out and hollow-voiced, one breakdown from erasing it all, until the ritual called, a lifeline etched in ancient ink, whispering that your fracture isn't failure, but the forge's first flame, the crack where light demands entry, and if you ignore it, the grind claims another soul unchallenged. But lean in now. Feel that pull in your gut. The war you were born to win awaits, not in louder roars, but in the quiet strike that reshapes everything. The days blurred into a gray exile after that midnight shatter, a pre-ritual purgatory where I wandered the corridors of my own hollow empire, a ghost in tailored armor, purpose slipping through my fingers like sand from a clenched fist, corporate burnout's invisible empire claiming another tributary, with stats carving the truth in cold stone. 70% of men like us masking exhaustion behind gritted teeth and forced grins, our warrior spirits betrayed not by blades but by boardrooms, where the innate fire that once drove ancestors across blooded fields now flickers under fluorescent lights, smothered by quarterly reports and the relentless churn of machine that devours dreams and spits out data points. I remember the mornings most vividly, that leaden drag from bed to desk, coffee turning bitter on my tongue as I scrolled through feeds of faceless successes, each one a mirror mocking my drift, lost in the fog of half-finished ventures and unspoken regrets, the betrayal cutting deepest because it wasn't laziness, brother, but a war on the self, modern masculinity's cruel slight where they told you strength is measured in hours logged and metrics climbed, yet left you adrift, inconsistent, chasing shadows of validation that evaporated by noon, your ancient essence, the Ronin's unyielding core, starve in silence in the noise of endless alerts. It was in this void that the scroll resurfaced, not as some dusty relic but a thunderclap from the past, pulling me into the ink-black wisdom of Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings, that undefeated blade's testament etched in the 17th century, where he mapped the path not through frenzy but through rings of mastery, earth for unshakable ground, water for fluid adaptation, fire for consuming drive, wind for reading the enemy's gale, and void, the silent heart where all converges, interwoven with Zen koans that twist the mind like roots through stone, riddles. Like what is the sound of one hand clapping, forcing you to shatter illusions and stand naked in truth? They peddle quick-fix apps in our world. Brother, 30-day challenges and dopamine drips promising rebirth in a swipe, but Bushido scoffs at such fragility, demanding the 90-day forge, a compounding mastery where each dawn's discipline stacks like iron links, Kaizen's whisper of 1% sharper turning fractures into fortresses, Goju's seamless flow bridging every gap between intent and iron will. This wasn't escape. It was excavation, unearthing the ritual's roots in the soil of exiled samurai who, cast from clans, wandered wastelands not to perish but to purify, their blades honed in isolation until the world bent to their edge. The tension coiled tighter then, a serpent in my gut, as I traced those lines by lamplight. The void isn't empty, it's where Ronins are born, that pregnant silence birthing the man who strikes once and ends wars, not the boy who flails in the storm. And in that reckoning, the question rose like smoke from embers. What if your fracture wasn't ruin, but the first crack in the old armor, the rift where light invades a rust, inviting you to shed the weight of false crowns and step into the forge, raw and ready, to reforge not just habits, but the very soul that forgot its thunder. Day one dawned like a blade's first kiss on whetstone, cold and unyielding, as I rose before the sun clawed the horizon, the ritual's ink still fresh on my vow. Scarred journal Kaizen's ancient mandate of 1% sharper pulling me into the pre-dawn patrol, not some grand revolution but a whisper of edges honed in the quiet. 5 breaths deeper in the chill air, a single line etched on the page not of grand manifestos but the raw truth of yesterday's fracture. I'm the void's echo, not its prisoner. And in that microcarve, the world shifted subtly, like mist yielding to steel, weeks 1 through 3 unfolding as these dawn rituals compounded, each. Morning a forge where I stripped the excess, the endless scroll of feeds that fed nothing but fog, replacing it with a patrol's rhythm. Journaling not as chore but as cut, one deliberate stroke against the inertia that had chained me, doubts creeping like fog off the river, whispering fraud Ronin, play acting at mastery while the real world devours a week, yet each 1% edge stacked like invisible armor. Sleep deepening from shattered shards to solid hours, focus sharpening from scattershot, frenzy to a gaze that pierced distractions, the internal war raging soft but fierce, my emerging steel clashing against the echo of old fractures. Who are you to claim this path when empires mock the solitary blade? But Kaizen answered not in roars but in the quiet accrual, turning whispers of will into a momentum that carried me forward, unbreakable in its subtlety. Then came weeks 4 through 6, the Goju flow tested in fire's cruel embrace, seamless practice without gap, that Zen thread weaving intent to action like breath to blade, and betrayal struck like a hidden dagger from a trusted ally, a business partner who'd sworn oaths over whiskey and deals, only to vanish with threads of our shared empire unraveled in his wake, leaving me knee-deep in the wreckage of contracts torn and trust bled dry. The kind of gut-wrench that modern men swallow silent, scrolling past the pain in search of the next hustle high. The world scrolls endlessly, brother, chasing the illusion of motion in infinite loops of content and comparison. But I struck once, true Musesh's one-cut doctrine rising like a koan in the chaos, demanding not frenzy's flail but the single, sovereign strike that ends a duel before it begins. And in that betrayal's storm, Goju became my anchor, flow without fracture, morning still patrolled. With dawn's edge, but now afternoons bent like water around the brakes, a 10-minute breath right mid-crisis to realign the spine. Inhale the cut, exhale the corpse, transforming reactive rage into deliberate redirection, doubts howling louder now, the fraud voice of tempest. See? Even steel bends. You're no Ronin, just another man cracked by the world's weight. Yet each seamless thread pulled me through, emerging not unscathed but scarred with purpose, the betrayal not a burial but a baptism, forging alliances anew from the ashes, output not scattered but laser true, relationships deepening in the wake of superficial ties severed clean. This odyssey wasn't linear triumph, but a philosophical pivot where Musesh's cut mirrored my own focused rebirth. The blade doesn't swing wild to wound the air. It commits wholly to the mark, ending illusion in one arc. And as the weeks wove tighter, you feel it too, don't you? Co-travel in the shadowed forge, your own patrol calling from the edges of distraction, that internal clash of fraud and fire not a curse but the cut's invitation, urging you to step from spectator's haze into the Odyssey's blood-warm stride, where every dawn's 1% isn't mere habit but the hammer on your hidden steel, betrayal sting the whetstone that reveals the edge you were born to wield. And in this unfolding, the ritual whispers its deepest truth. The path carves you as much as you carve it, one true strike at a time, turning exile into empire, fracture into forever.by week 7. The ritual's hum became a pulse in my veins. Musesh's 5 rings no longer distant echoes, but living pillars I forged into. The marrow of my days, adapting that undefeated blade's architecture to the jagged terrain of modern exile Earth first, the unyielding foundation where Kaizen's alchemy turned my scattered soil into sovereign ground, no longer the old overwhelmed binges that left me buried under avalanche to-dos, drowning in the frenzy of all-nothing assaults that promised empires but delivered exhaustion's grave. But now the new micro-victories stacking like ancient stones in a cairn, one deliberate layer at a time. A single focused hour before the world woke, not conquering the mountain but claiming its foothold, compounding not through thunderous decrees but the quiet arithmetic of persistence, where yesterday's edge sharpens today's strike, habit sovereignty rising not as a crown seized but a root system delving deep, anchoring the warrior against tempest that once uprooted him whole. From Earth's steady cradle flowed water, the adaptive zen breath that bent me fluid around the deadline floods crashing like rogue waves. Inhale the surge, exhale the form, a right borrowed from the river's unresisting wisdom, where rigidity snaps and flow endures, transforming those midnight tsunamis of urgent pings and impossible timelines from soul crushes into mere currents to navigate, my lungs learning the koan's curve. Be water, my friend. Not as Bruce Lee's flash, but Musashi's deeper. Current. Each breath a ripple redirecting chaos without waste. The old reactive flail giving way to the seamless glide, where pressure doesn't pound you under but polishes the stone of your will smoother, stronger. Then fire ignited. Bushido's passion rites flaring hot in the ritual's core, a control blaze to reignite the drive that burnout had banked to ash, daily vows whispered at dawn's edge, not manic mantras but etched in the chest forge. I burn for the cut, not the crowd, fanning embers of purpose through deliberate fuel, a walk under open sky to summon the ancestors' heat, or the iron clang of weights lifted not for vanity's mirror but to echo the samurai's unquenchable fury. Contrasting the world's cold algorithms that quantify drive into burnout's ledger, this fire a sovereign inferno, warming without consuming, reigniting the masculine core that modern myth had chilled to indifference, turning hollow hustles into holy pursuits where every action pulses with a heartbeat of why. Wind followed. The scout's vigilant gale, attuning me to the rival's noise, the cacophony of competitors' shadows and market winds howling distractions, not to battle blindly but to read the currents, a pillar of discernment. Where I carve out evenings to map the ether, not scrolling in envy but observing like a hawk on thermals, Musashi's strategy unfolding in the digital dojo. Know the wind, or be scattered by it, shifting from the old paranoia of endless comparison to a calm reconnaissance that turns threat into terrain, your edge honed by what others chase in vain, the ritual weaving this awareness into armor light as air yet impenetrable. At the apex loomed void, the daily stillness order that hollowed me to hold more, a sacred pause at dusk where I sat cross-legged in the gathering dark, auditing not tasks but the spaces between the unspoken doubts, the breaths unclaimed, Musashi's ultimate ring, the emptiness pregnant with all potential, where Zen's dissolve the ego's chatter, revealing the Ronin not as actor but essence, a mirror to the self-silent command. Binding these pillars seamless was Goju, the practice without gap, that Okinawan thread pulling earth to water in unbroken flow, fires heat tempered by wind's whisper, all converging in void's embrace, no lapses, no excuses, just a warrior's continuum where intent and iron will merge like breath and blade, execution not effort but existence. Gurus sell 7-day miracles. Brother, glittering elixirs of overnight alchemy that fade like morning dew. But samurai demand 90-day surrender, a forge where pillars temper not the surface but the soul, compounding your ancient fire into an unbreakable alloy. And here's a cut you can claim now, in this breath between words. Pause with me for the 5-minute pillar scan. Close your eyes, feel earth's ground beneath your soles. Stack one micro-victory in your mind's can. Flow water through your chest. Inhale a deadline's wave. Exhale reformed. Kindle fire in your gut. Whisper your oil to the flame within. Sense wind whisper. Scout one noise to release. Sink into void. Order the stillness. What calls unmet? 5 minutes. That's a strike. Feel it rewire you, not as theory but as a truth etching your core. Pillars rising not imposed but invited, turning the fractured man into the forged sovereign, where every ring hums in harmony, and the ritual's power isn't in the knowing, but in the becoming. One integrated breath at a time. Week 10 crashed upon me like a rogue wave in the ritual's deepening current. The pillars I'd forged trembling under the weight of a crisis that clawed from within. Not the external storms of deals gone sour or deadlines that bent but held, but a subterranean quake, imposter surges rising like bile in the throat, venomous whispers that I'd been fooling no one but myself all along. This Ronin rebirth, just a fragile costume draped over the same fractured frame. Look at you, playing at mastery while the world spins on without your smoke and mirrors, each surge a spike through the chest, pulling me toward the seductive pull of old habits, that siren call to scroll. The night away in numb oblivion, to drown the doubts in the familiar flood of feeds and fleeting highs, anything to evade the forge's unrelenting heat. And then the family strains layered in like salt on the wound, my wife's eyes hollowed by my absence as master's discipline, our daughter's laughter a distant echo through walls I built not of stone but silence, arguments flaring sharp as unsheathed blades over dinner's edge. You're here but not here, lost in your warrior games while we fade. The rectitude of Bushido, that iron spine of right action, twisting into accusation, demanding I honor the oaths beyond the self. Yet here I stood, the shadow self uncoiling in the dim, a dark twin born of every unclaimed breath, every gap where Goju faltered, mirroring my every move with mocking precision, the Zen jewel ignited not on some misty battlefield but in the forge of my own ribcage, where the inner Ronin waited, armored in my every buried fear, eyes gleaming with the cruelty of truths I'd evaded. This was no gentle unraveling, brother, but emotional rawness stripped to the bone, tears carving tracks down my face as I knelt in the pre-dawn hush, the shadow lunging with koans turned to barbs. What is Mu? This nothing you chase? Just another lie for the broken dreamer, that ancient riddle's void now a vortex sucking at my edges, dissolving doubt loops in its merciless spin, forcing me to confront the loop's lie, not laziness or lack, but the ego's desperate clutch on illusions of control, Bushido's rectitude rising as counterstrike, a solemn vow etched in the heart's quiet thunder. Act true, or perish in pretense. The duel raging in sweat-slick silence, my fists clench against the mat as a shadow press, family strains echoing like war drums in the distance. Old habits coiling around my ankles like vines of forgotten vine, pulling me toward the easy retreat where numbness reigns supreme. The coward whispers retreat, brother, slinking into the cool shade of excuses and half-measures, but the warrior dances in flames, embracing the blaze that chars away the false skin, revealing the scarred steel beneath. And now, lean into this with me. Feel the forge fire kindling in your own core. Close your eyes as I guide you through the heat. Envision the shadow rising before you, not as enemy but echo, its face your own in distorted ink. Imposter surges flooding your veins like ink in water. Breathe Mu into it, that great no-thing dissolving the surge. Let the doubt loop unwind like smoke through fingers. See the family strains the specters of the forge rim, their pain not chains but fuel, rectitude demanding you step forward, not away. Sense the old habits, a serpent slithering near, seductive in their cool scales. Strike once, true, with Bushido's edge, severing not in rage but resolve, the flames licking higher now, charring the broken dreamer's husk, the heat building to a roar that mirrors your pulse, sweat beating like dew on dawn's blade. And in this dance, feel the shift ignite, the coward's whisper fading to ashes, your feet find rhythm in the blaze, scars forming not as wounds but etchings of sovereignty, the shadow recoiling not in defeat but integration, its strength folding into yours like rivers to sea. That was my tear streak breakthrough, brother, on the mat's unyielding witness, as week 10's demon crested and broke, the jewel won not by domination but dissolution, Mu's empty hand clapping once, rectitude path cleared of debris, the identity pivot crashing through like dawn's first blade. From broken dreamer, adrift in the fog of what IFS and wise, to scarred sovereign, forge in the forge's honest fire. Every surge and strain not saboteurs but smiths, hammering the raw ore of me into un alloy that bent no more, the inner Ronin not slain but saluted, standing sentinel in the quiet after, whispering that true mastery isn't flawless form but the scars that map the strikes, the family bonds reforged and vulnerabilities glow, habits pull transmuted to power's pull, and in that raw rebirth, the ritual's deepest cut revealed itself. The shadow isn't foe to fell, but forge mate to face. It's flames of very breath that birth the unbreakable man, you and I rising together from the embers. Sovereign at last, the jewel's echo of vow etched eternal, act true, dance fierce, and the forge yields not just survival, but supremacy that as the ashes of my own forge settled into scars that gleamed like tempered steel. The ritual's fire didn't gut out in solitude. It leaped, brother, igniting echoes in the lives of men I mentored through shadowed scrolls and dawnlit vows. Ripples widening from my single cut into a brotherhood's quiet thunder, where fractures forged not just one Ronin, but a legion, each story a blade's reflection in the other's edge, their arcs mirroring mine in the ancient rhythm of break, build, become. Take Alex, the tech founder who clawed his way to a silicon throne only to find it hollow as a cracked circuit board, his days devoured by the glow of endless screens, 70-hour marathons yielding apps that scaled empires but eroded his soul, fracture hitting like a server crash in the dead of night, Panic's code looping infinite, family at distant ping in the ether, legacy reduced the lines of forgotten code he'd meant to write for his sons. He entered the ritual of ghost in the machine. Whispers of fraud echoing his own imposter surges, but the pillars called him deeper. Void's daily stillness ordered the anchor that slashes screen time by half, not through iron wills but moves merciful void, dissolving the dopamine deluge into deliberate dark. Breaths audited at dusk where he reclaimed. The spaces between pings, Kaizen stacking microcuts like commits to a cleaner repo, one offline hour birthing focus that coded breakthroughs without burnout's blaze, water flowing him adaptive through investigales, until rebirth dawned in week 12. Legacy reclaimed not in viral launches, but in bedtime stories etched from his sharpened voice, the broken code arising scarred sovereign, his apps now vessels for true connection, the thrill of our shared scrolls electric in late-night calls. Brother, the void held me when the code couldn't. Then came Marcus, the veteran entrepreneur whose empire spanned continents like old battle maps, but age and betrayal had weathered him to driftwood, fracturing deeper in a boardroom coup that stripped his flags and left him adrift in whiskey's haze, dry banked to embers under the weight of what others, family strains pulling like undertow. There were ghosts in the machine until the 90 days called them kings, his arc igniting with fire's Bushido rites, those Dornos fanning forgotten. Fury into a controlled inferno. I burn for the pivot, not the pyre. Rites that reignited the conqueror's core through ironclad mornings of vow and wait, Goji weaving seamless from intent to empire's turn. When scouting the rival's gales to map a new horizon, Earth compounding micro-victories into a pivot that birthed a leaner legacy, sloughing bloated ventures for a forge of mentorships that echoed our brotherhood's heat. Rebirth cresting in tears at day 90, not of loss but liberation. Veteran Ronin standing taller, scars mapping strikes that felled illusions, his voice gravel rough in our circle. The fire didn't consume, it crowned. And Liam, the young blade in his 20s, inconsistencies prey in a cubicle coliseum, fracture slow bleed of half-starts and hollow nights, addicted to distractions drip, purpose a phantom he'd chase but never claim, family echoes faint as unanswered texts. Pillars pulled him from the fog, Earth is steadfast ground where Kaizen's 1% edges stacked against a binge of overwhelm, micro-victories like dawn patrols journaling the truth. I am the cut, not the chaos, compounding into habits. Sovereign. Water bending his reactive breaks, void auditing the stillness to silence the scroll siren, until Goju flowed him gapless into action stride, rebirth a thunderclap in week 8's quiet roar, from inconsistent shadow to scarred sovereign striding promotions and kinships reclaimed, his breakthrough a vow shared in our forged glow. The stack built me unbreakable. In these ripples, brother, the emotional high surges like a shared breath in the dojo's hush, the brotherhood thrill of sovereignty woven tight, scars saluting scars across screens and silences, our rituals not solitary strikes but symphonies of steel, contrast carving deep. There were ghosts in the machine, flickering code in the grid's indifferent hum, until the 90 days called them kings, crowning the fracture with crowns of quiet command. Empires not of noise but nerve, legacies not chased, but carved. Feel it pull at you now, that FOMO's forge flame in your chest. Your echo awaits in these tales, not as distant thunder but the next strike in the circle. The rituals ripple ready to claim your fracture. Turn your ghost a king, if only you etch the vow and step into the heat where brothers become unbreakable. Brother, the forge heat lingers in these words, but now the handover, your 90-day blade, not a rigid map etched in stone, but a customizable scroll, pillars phased to temper your core in. The rhythm of Muzashi's rings, earth to void weaving through 90 dawns where fracture yields to sovereignty. This isn't a plan, it's your becoming. The ancient forge claiming your modern marrow, one deliberate cut transforming the inconsistent wanderer into a scarred sovereign who strikes true. Divided into 3 arcs of 30 days each, the first rooting in oath in Kaizen's quiet compound, where you rise pre-dawn for patrols that stack micro-victories like invisible links, journal the edge. What 1% sharpens me today? Tracking weekly in a vow-bound ledger, not app sterile glow but ink on paper that bleeds your intent. Building habit sovereignty against overwhelmed binge. Waters. Adaptive breath introduced mid-phase to flow you through the day's gales. A 10-minute ride at noon. Inhale the wave. Exhale reformed. Logging bends that once broke you. Goju threading seamless from intent to iron. No gaps where will whispers weak. By day 30, audit the continuity. Goju's mirror held to your stride. Where did the flow fracture? Seal it with tomorrow's breath. A checkpoint not of judgment but rectification. Bushido's rectitude demanding you honor the gaps as gifts. Emerging from this phase not hurried but hewn. The blades base broad and unyielding. Arc 2 surges with fire's control blaze and wind vigilant scout, igniting drive through dawn-O's. I burn for the cut, not the crowd. Rights that fan embers into empire's fuel. Paired with evening reconnaissance, map the rival's noise, not in envy but edge. What wind scatters me? Redirected to thrust. Trackers marking the inferno spread. Weekly flames audited in the ledger. Output not frantic but fierce. Relationships reforged in the heat's honest glow. Void stillness teasing at edges with dust pauses that hollow you for more. Dissolving doubt's deluge in move's merciful spin. Day 60 calls a Kaizen audit for 1% leaps. Stack the edges. What compounded? What calls sharper? Contrast carving punch here. Podcast pedal theory. Glittering whispers of wisdom without the whetstone's grind. But this is a sweat of samurai. The ritual salt in your veins. Turning abstract air into alloyed action. You're becoming not borrowed but bled for. The second arc crowning you in control command. Scars saluting the strikes that shaped you. The final 30 converge all rings in void pregnant hush. Daily audits deepening. Sit in the silence at twilight. What echoes unmet? Dissolve it in the nothing. Goju now the spine of it all. Seamless execution where pillars pulses one. Trackers evolving to holistic vows. Earth grounds. Water bends. Fire drives, wind reads, void holds, customizes your forged demands, perhaps waiting fire for the empire builder, void for the doubt-haunted soul, but always a ledger's witness, compounding not just days but destiny, emerging day 90 not unscathed but unbreakable, identity locked in the quiet thunder of who you've always been beneath the rust. Podcast pedal theory, brother, echoes in the ether that fade with the feed, but this blueprint is the sweat of samurai. The blades wait in your grip, forged to the man who claims it now. Seal the handover with his quick start vow, spoken aloud in the breath between now and next. I claim the 90-day blade, pillars phase in my fire. From fractures fog, I rise scarred sovereign, one cut eternal. Etch it, feel it locked to becoming. The ritual no longer mine but yours, ready to carve the echo that awaits. Brother, the Odyssey arcs to its eternal edge now, from midnight's fracture clawing your chest, through void's call and the first cut's blood-warm stride, pillars forging your core in Kaizen stack and Goju flow, shadow jewels flames dancing scars into sovereignty, ripples of brothers rising like blades in dawn's hush, blueprint claimed in sweat's honest ink. This emotional forge has stripped you raw, remade you Ronin. The hollow ache transmuted to unbreakable fire, identity no. Longer whispered doubt but thundered truth. Pause here, in this breath's blade-thin space, and craft your 90-day of the loud, voice it into the ether like a war cry etched in stone. I vow the pillars of earth and void, waters bend and fires roar. By day 90, I emerge unbreakable via this Kaizen strike. Name your 1% edge, your dawn patrol's vow. Scarred sovereign, cutting chaos eternal. Feel it lock, the becoming sealed in your chest quiet thunder. Join the unseen forge, this brotherhood of silent strikes where ghosts claim crowns. I'll let the grind claim another, rusting your thunder in distraction's dust. The ritual begins in the breath between doubts. Strike true. Adaptive breath introduced mid-phase to flow you through the day's gales. A 10-minute ride at noon. Inhale the wave. Exhale reformed. Logging bends that once broke you. Goju threading seamless from intent to iron. No gaps where will whispers weak. By day 30, audit the continuity. Goju's mirror held to your stride. Where did the flow fracture? Seal it with tomorrow's breath. A checkpoint not of judgment but rectification. Bushido's rectitude demanding you honor the gaps as gifts. Emerging from this phase not hurried but hewn. The blades base broad and unyielding. Arc 2 surges with fire's control blaze and wind vigilant scout, igniting drive through dawn-O's. I burn for the cut, not the crowd. Rights that fan embers into empire's fuel. Paired with evening reconnaissance, map the rival's noise, not in envy but edge. What wind scatters me? Redirected to thrust. Trackers marking the inferno spread. Weekly flames audited in the ledger. Output not frantic but fierce. Relationships reforged in the heat's honest glow. Void stillness teasing at edges with dust pauses that hollow you for more. Dissolving doubt's deluge in move's merciful spin. Day 60 calls a Kaizen audit for 1% leaps. Stack the edges. What compounded? What call sharper? Contrast carving punch here. Podcast pedal theory. Glittering whispers of wisdom without the whetstone's grind. But this is the sweat of samurai, the ritual salt in your veins, turning abstract air into alloyed action. You're becoming not borrowed but bled for. The second art crowning you in control command. Scars saluting the strikes that shaped you. The final 30 converge all rings in void pregnant hush, daily audits deepening. Sit in the silence at twilight. What echoes unmet? Dissolve it in the nothing. Goad you now the spine of it all. Seamless execution where pillars pulses one. Trackers evolving to holistic vows. Earth grounds, water bends, fire drives, wind reads, void holds, customizes your forged demands, perhaps waiting fire for the empire builder, void for the doubt-haunted soul, but always a ledger's witness, compounding not just days but destiny, emerging day 90 not unscathed but unbreakable, identity locked in the quiet thunder of who you've always been beneath the rust. Podcast pedal theory. Brother, echoes in the ether that fade with the feed, but this blueprint is the sweat of samurai, the blades wait in your grip, forged to the man who claims it now. Seal the handover with his quick start vow, spoken aloud in the breath between now and next. I claim the 90-day blade, pillars phase in my fire. From fractures fog, I rise scarred sovereign, one cut eternal. Etch it, feel it locked to becoming. The ritual no longer mine but yours, ready to carve the echo that awaits. Brother, the Odyssey arcs to its eternal edge now, from midnight's fracture clawing your chest, through void's call and the first cut's blood-warm stride, pillars forging your core in Kaizen stack and Goju flow, shadow jewels flames dancing scars into sovereignty, ripples of brothers rising like blades in dawn's hush, blueprint claimed in sweat's honest ink. This emotional forge has stripped you raw, remade you Ronin. The hollow ache transmuted to unbreakable fire, identity no. Longer whispered doubt but thundered truth. Pause here, in this breath's blade-thin space, and craft your 90-day of the loud, voice it into the ether like a war cry etched in stone. I vow the pillars of earth and void, waters bend and fires roar. By day 90, I emerge unbreakable via this Kaizen strike. Name your 1% edge, your dawn patrol's vow. Scarred sovereign, cutting chaos eternal. Feel it lock, the becoming sealed in your chest quiet thunder. Join the unseen forge, this brotherhood of silent strikes where ghosts claim crowns. I'll let the grind claim another, rusting your thunder in distraction's dust. The ritual begins in the breath between doubts. Strike true,